This is All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things, questions, and markets related to Bitcoin. Little B for the currency and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation. All Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee, taking a look at Bitcoin for a live look. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XVX index is currently trading at 32,151 Bitcoin, slightly down about 0.4% over the past 24 hours. That's really nothing, though, for our favorite coin. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
Bitcoin committed to Lightning channels has grown about 30% since El Salvador's Bitcoin law passed. This chart from the CoinDesk research team. We see that when El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, BTC committed to Lightning channels has been on a tear, which the Lightning Network relies on to facilitate transactions. Like Bitcoin, the Lightning Network is a network of nodes that work together peer-to-peer. The purpose of the Lightning Network is to facilitate secure anti-double spending transactions off-chain on its separate second layer before finally settling them on the Bitcoin blockchain. The first step in any transaction on the Lightning Network begins with a channel. A channel connects two nodes and allows them to pass information, or in this case, Bitcoins, to each other. And as this chart shows, more Bitcoin committed to channels means more people are using the Lightning Network and therefore using Bitcoin. And joining me to discuss BTC and more on Bitcoin news is our Week in Review panel. Welcome, CoinDesk Managing Editor of Markets, Brad Cowan in Austin, and Research Analyst, George Kaludis in New York. Welcome, George and Brad.
Hey,
Happy
guys.
Friday. Good to see you. All right. So George, your thoughts on this, because it comes from the research team, on this Lightning Network chart. How do you interpret this data?
Yeah, like you said, the Lightning Network is widely viewed as the way to solve this scaling problem that we have in Bitcoin. Bitcoin started as a peer-to-peer digital currency, but as more users came online, fees became unsustainable in terms of sending a daily transaction. The big thing people talk about is, okay, well, can I buy a cup of coffee with Bitcoin? And the answer right now is probably no with the base layer, but the second layer is coming on with Lightning, and we have seen since the El Salvador law came into effect that there's been a ton of growth in Lightning. The nuance I would say there is that although there's been a lot of growth, there is still a need for more users to come on and start using this in order to test potential vulnerabilities of the network. There are a lot of naysayers to the Lightning Network, and there is some validity to that, but there is also validity to the fact that Lightning Network does work, but it's just a matter of getting it put in place.
Do we know who these users could potentially be, or regionally, or just any data on who they might be?
It's a little bit more difficult to pinpoint exactly where it's being used, but there are a lot of anecdotal stories, especially out of El Salvador. A really fun example is there was an ice shaver in El Salvador, which sells sort of like an Italian ice equivalent, and someone got a hold of his Lightning wallet address, and people on Bitcoin Twitter donated thousands of dollars to him, which is a really good, feel-good story. So in a way, we don't know exactly where these people are, but there are some success stories in El Salvador, specifically Bitcoin Beach.
All right. Very cool. Brad, taking a look at Bitcoin, the week started off on a low note. Bitcoin slipped below $30,000. Right now it's at 32, trending flat right now. So we're seeing a bit of a rebound towards the end of the week. Is that a good sign? Do you have any clues as to price direction?
Well, the past couple days, action has definitely been super encouraging for the bulls. There was some concern based on signals from the options market that if we dipped below $30,000, we were going to potentially see a big sell-off, and a lot of people were warning about that. And instead, what happened? We dipped a little bit below 30,000, and we bounced right back up. And now, one of the narratives in the market is potentially that a lot of people are short And if we get a pop here, there could be a short squeeze, and that could actually drive prices higher faster. So yeah, for sure, things looking a lot better for the Bitcoin bulls now than they did a week ago.
Interesting. There's also, we talked about the GBTC share unlocking last week. Did it turn out to be much of a thing this week? I don't know. Did that contribute to the bump that we saw?
There's so many opinions about this particular issue, and the only thing that everybody agrees on is that there is a lot of money that is, involved here. And so basically these shares coming unlocked. And one of the things that some people said was that you would see the GBTC shares sell off, but you might see people buying Bitcoin as they sort of unwound their trades. Instead, we've actually seen, this bounce in Bitcoin over the past couple days. And we've also seen actually the GBTC discount has narrowed, the GBT share price moving closer to that underlying Bitcoin price in the Grayscale Trust. And so that was kind of a surprise. And one thing you can say is that if there were fears that this was going to be a big negative, it certainly has not turned out that way.
Right. Well, another possible reason for the bounce we're seeing towards the end of the week is the B word event that happened on Wednesday. It's we saw Elon Musk, we saw Jack Dorsey, CATHIE Wood, and it was kind of the event of the week for the Bitcoin community. And what are some of your takeaways from that conference? George, I know you said you were a little disappointed.
Yeah, I think it's mostly because I'm so involved in the space, and I was sort of disappointed at the fact that there wasn't
high
this very
expectations, George.
Yeah, I was expecting a very nuanced conversation around miners or maybe block size and why you can't just 10x certain constants and you automatically scale the network. But to the credit of the B word, it wasn't necessarily driven towards someone like me. In fact, it was stated, and I'm going to read this off right here, for corporate officers and public market investors. And it's a means to demystify and destigmatize what Bitcoin is to that group specifically. And I think if we think about it like that, it totally did that, right? You have three very, very influential and important figures in three separate, maybe interconnected industries. With CATHIE is a Wall Street person, Jack is an internet guy, and Elon really, he does cars, batteries, and he wants to go to space. But these are three very different people, and they very clearly are fans of Bitcoin and see its potential in the future. And they may not agree necessarily exactly with each nuanced piece, but they certainly see it having a place in the world. If then the people, these corporate officers and public market investors who are watching that live were interested even more, there were some really, really good deep dives in these pre-recorded tracks. Three that I specifically watched and liked were Nick Carter. He talked about energy. Lynn Alden, she talked about the irreplaceability of Bitcoin. And there was a Alex Glassine track that talked about the human freedom aspect of Bitcoin. So while the live track didn't exactly do what I think the most ardent Bitcoiner would have liked to see, it certainly did a good thing. And in fact, the market jumped during it. And I hate pointing towards the Elon Musk pump, but this was more of the really, really entrenched smart people pump, if that makes sense, for the time of the live stream.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, what were your greatest takeaways?
Well, let's see. I find Elon Musk just fascinating to just listen to him talk. I don't know if it's his accent or just kind of his intellectual way he speaks about Dogecoin, but Jack Dorsey also. He's also a fascinating person, just his sort of studious way of talking.
What I found really interesting about Jack was he said that his hope was to see Bitcoin bring global peace to the world. And on the breakdown with NLW, He explained that, a sound money standard could reduce state resources for making war, which is to say that if states' monopoly on money were reduced, their monopoly on violence would also be reduced. It's an interesting concept, but further to that, I would wonder, are we seeing resources more equally distributed with Bitcoin, or just a distribution of wealth from one class to another? So some of my greatest takeaways were, first of all, as George said, seeing three giants talk about Bitcoin. Elon revealed that SpaceX holds some BTC and that Elon himself holds Ethereum personally. So very cool conversation in that regard. We're also learning from Amazon.
Just a little connection there. I mean, a lot of people think the space race is really ultimately about mining outer space eventually, and that therefore that would lead to violence between warring mining enterprises. So it's like interesting that, there's like sort of ulterior big picture concepts at work in some of these discussions.
Yeah. It's interesting, big ideas. Don't know if they're fully thought through yet, but interesting to think through. And other, just switching topics, Amazon is telling Business Insider that they're interested in crypto and they're looking to hire a digital currency lead. George, have you caught wind of this story?
Yes, and I would say that I think their opacity is intentional at first. We're not sure if this means that, okay, hey, we're going to enable Lightning in the Amazon cart and you're going to be able to use Bitcoin for all your transactions, or does it mean that they're going to try to do here's our Libra or DM equivalent and make Amazon coin, and you are going to have to use Amazon coin with everything.
Coin. Goodness.
Yeah, as Amazon continues to take over the world and take over parts of our lives. So I guess initially I would be hesitant to say this is great for Bitcoin specifically, but as we find out more news, it'd be interesting to see what they do.
Mm-hmm. Taking a look at next week, BlockFi is in regulatory crosshairs. And so there's a question of what are they going to do about it? Well, actually, they may go public. What's the word on that, George?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. The news cycle says, hey, 3 states are looking at BlockFi and saying, hey, your business interest account, their account that bears interest is actually a security in that state. So you're going to have to either stop onboarding people or figure it out. And as a response to that, instead of, doing the proper regulatory stuff that you need to do, they said, okay, we're just going to raise our Series E, and then in 12 to 18 months, we're going to go public. Whether there are things going on in the background, I do not know. We do not know, but that's something actually to look forward to going forward.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And in the markets, Brad, what are you watching out for?
Well, we're still kind of in this, 8 weeks between $30,000 and $40,000. This is the 9th week, and the signals were looking like, things were coming to a head and we were going to bust out. And sure enough, we've dropped below $30,000, but now we're right back in it. And so that $30,000 is looking pretty solid. If we break below that again, that would probably be pretty negative. But if we go above right now where the 50-day moving average is around $34,000, then some people are saying we can quickly move back up to 40,000 towards the top of that range. So things definitely looking better, than they were a week ago for sure.
Well, and another bullish signal is more institutions are getting involved. We learned that JP Morgan is opening up crypto funds to all wealth investors. And so, George, do you think that'll put pressure on other banks going forward?
Yeah, I actually do. So banking and client services in general is a client-driven business, but it's also a competition-driven business. And we see that a lot I come from investment banking, and a lot of the investment banks, they really change salaries for their employees as their competitors change salaries for their employees. So maybe not an exact replica of what they're going to do in terms of Bitcoin, but if JP Morgan's offering Bitcoin and someone who's a client of Goldman Sachs or XYZ financial wealth manager they might demand it as well. There might be pressure from that end. I think that more institutions will begin offering it.
Okay, super interesting. All right, we're going to leave it there, but thank you, Brad, and thank you, George, for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Christine. You too.
All right, that was our CoinDesk Week in Review panel with CoinDesk Managing Editor of Markets, Brad Cowan in Austin, and Research Analyst George Kaludis in New York. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. We'll do it all over again on Monday at 3 p.m. Also, join me for First Mover on Monday morning at 9 a.m., your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.